Welcome to Lisa's Cottage. Thanks so much for joining me on my very first episode. Today I'm going to be talking about a paranormal case file that myself and my team investigated over 10 years ago. It's called The Military Veteran. Thanks so much for joining me here, where curiosity meets the supernatural. Also, welcome my co host today, Betty. She's right over here. She's an introvert. She remains mostly quiet. She'll be watching over us. She does live here 365 days a year. So, as I was saying, this first paranormal case file is from my own records. This case was particularly difficult for a few reasons, and it's the most disturbing case that my team and I ever investigated, which is why I chose it for this first episode. Of course, it's the week of Halloween, so I figured, what better time? Okay. Light your candles, snuggle in, sit back, and relax while I share the story. Thanks again for joining me. So, as I said, it was over 10 years ago when I had a paranormal investigation team here in southeastern Michigan. We mainly investigated houses so we could help people who thought that they had a haunting in their house or had, paranormal things going on. Of course, I had a website. All of the contacts originally came to me, and then I would contact them back, schedule a phone call, etc., to kind of ask them some questions, see what they had going on, see what their concerns were. From there, we always scheduled, a time, a day for an investigation, if it was warranted. So one day in the fall, it was fall, early winter, I was contacted by a man. I'll call him Sean. Now, I have to say, first of all, that I do have this one vividly in my memory because it was disturbing. And this one pretty much sent chills down my spine. I've got a feeling in the in the pit of my stomach now, thinking about having to recall it. But I do want to share this story. So anyhow, I've moved various times. This was over 10 years ago, and unfortunately, through a few laptop, computer crashes and such, I've lost my EVPs, which is electronic voice phenomena. So unfortunately, I don't have those to share, or I would. This case in particular had some doozies. Okay. So I'm going to call this man Sean. Okay. Sean contacted me through the website, and he said that he was going through some experiences in the house that he lived in. Now, he lived in this house. It was his mother's house. Him and his girlfriend both lived in the house. And he started to tell me, some pretty wild things that had been happening. I asked him what's been occurring in the house. I usually ask, are there particular rooms where the things happen, particular days, times, any kind of reoccurring kind of patterns anywhere. So Sean continued, as we talked over the phone, he continued to tell me things that we had not as a team had to deal with. Him and his girlfriend shared a bedroom upstairs. This house, it was an older house. I'd say 50s, 60s, a smaller two-story, kind of like an A-frame type of house, right on a busy street. Okay. In the middle of a busy city on a busy street. So, anyway, from what Sean was telling me, he was telling me that most of the occurrences seem to happen in his mother's bedroom. His mother is a Catholic. He was raised Catholic. But there's some things about Sean as we talked on the phone that kind of set off a few red flags. He did admit to drinking quite a bit. The reason, and I honestly can't say that I blame him for the amount that he drank, because he is a military veteran and he had served about 5 tours of duty in the most horrific places imaginable. So anyhow, after I talked to him on the phone, I kind of, I had some couple little red flags, the drinking, a few other things that he said, and I thought, this doesn't seem like the cases we normally, would do. Seems a little bit extra. There's some extra things happening here. So I had one of my team members, her name's Sandra. I had her go with me to do a walkthrough during the day. I wanted somebody with me, particularly because it was a man who contacted me. Most of the time, it was both, husband and wife or family members together, that type of thing. And I've always, remained safe and smart when it comes to things like that. I don't know this man. He just contacted me through our website. It could all be a lie. Just to get a woman in his house, you just can't be too safe. So anyhow, I asked Sandra to go with me and I said, we'll go just on a Saturday or something whenever we can set it up with him, just to do a walkthrough and I wanted to talk to him in person. So she agreed, and him and I set up a day. It was Saturday. And I said, it's 1:00, okay? And he said, oh, sure, that's fine. I'll be home. Okay. So Sandra and I go to the house. We drive up. And it was fairly cold outside. Wasn't the dead of winter, no pun intended. Sorry about that, Betty. But anyway, it was, it was chilly. So we go and we knock on the door and there's no answer. We knock on it multiple times. And I thought, well, this is kind of strange, It was only a couple days ago that we set up the day and time together, and he said this day was great and the time was fine. So we start knocking a little bit harder, and finally he opens the door. And he opens the door and he's looking at us and he's kind of looks stunned, He had been asleep. And I tell him, hey, I'm Lisa, and this is Sandra, and we set up this day and time. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I overslept, And he says, come on in. And he opens the door and we step in the house. And I could instantly tell that either he had been drinking that morning or it was still a continuation from the night before. It was painfully obvious. And I thought, okay, this isn't good, So anyhow, over the years of studying the paranormal, learning from different, people who had done it for, many years, you learn different, meanings of things or theories or explanations. And I'd always heard many, many times someone explaining an experience, or they went on an investigation or something I'd seen on TV, and they would say, "Oh, it felt oppressive. It just felt heavy." And I'd always like, what does that feel? What exactly does that feel like in your body? What do you feel? How does something feel that way? I never knew until we stepped in that house. We step in and it hit me like a ton of bricks. The feeling is extremely heavy. And the one thing I can compare it to, I guess, would be if you live in a climate where during the summer you experience humidity, like we do here in Michigan, and we hardly ever get the heat without humidity in the summertime. Or if you've been in a sauna, okay? It feels really heavy, almost like you're walking through an extreme fog where it's just pushing back at you. So Sean, tries to wake up, and I again, okay, why don't you walk us through a few of the rooms, you know, that you mentioned, in each room, tell us, what the experience has been. And the one thing that my team and I always did, and we did this for a reason with our audio recorders, they're really small. If you get a digital recorder, it'll fit in a pocket. Um, we always turn them on before entering the location where we were going, because through our research and experience, we found that spirits like to join in on the conversations instead of, saying, "Are you there? Is anybody there?" You know, they want you to know that they're there. Okay. It's kind of like, "Do you see me now? Can you hear me now?" So we always tend to get better EVPs if we turned on the recorders before we entered. Okay. And we didn't have a like, hit your record button now. We did it even before we walked into the building. So Sandra and I, we did that in this case. I'm like, we're going to turn on our recorder. She said, okay. She had one. I had one. So the first place that he takes us is to his mom's room. His mom wasn't home at the time. I don't remember where she was. And like he had told me, she was very, religious Catholic, that he had been raised that way. But he said he no longer went to church. He no longer believed because of his experience, with the wars. So his mom had some crosses hanging in various places, on the wall of her bedroom, religious artifacts. And he said that at different times the crosses would fall off completely, or they would end up upside down. A Bible that she kept on the nightstand next to her bed would be on the floor. And it was always the religious items that seemed to be the ones that were moved or messed with. So we didn't take any pictures that day because we weren't technically investigating. I just wanted her to go with me to get a better grip on what was going on and get a, kind of get a feel for this guy and his personality. And, I kind of wanted a witness, because I had told her, "Hey, Sandra, the vibes I got off the phone weren't that great." So, some backup would be, tell me that I'm not crazy. Tell me that I'm not thinking something that's, is it just me? Do you get the same vibe? What's happening here? Okay. So we continue, talking with him. And as we stood in his mom's room, he started talking about his military experience. Now, I'm very intuitive. I'm an empath. I have mediumship abilities, which is, speaking with spirits who have crossed over. So I feel things a lot of the time. Okay. I've been that way since I've been a kid. I pick up things, I feel them physically. So he started talking about his military experience and things that he had to do that he wished he'd never had to do. And I could feel the guilt. Literally, it was like it was pouring out of him. Just poured out of him. And I felt so bad for this man. See, look, okay, I'm starting to cry. That feeling has come right back to me. Because I remember it like it was yesterday. His mom's room was a small bedroom. And I thought, oh gosh, I feel so bad for him. So we continue on. And I said, where's your room? And he says it's upstairs. Now this house, because it was an older type of house, it was one of those houses. It was filled with the dark, really dark wood. You know how they don't make houses like this anymore. All the little built-in shelves and dark wood. So the stairs completely wood, dark trim going up, the whole thing. And when you get upstairs, there's only 2 rooms up there, 2 bedrooms up there, plus a built-in little, I don't want to say closet, because it's not like a regular closet. I don't know what they're called. If someone out there knows, please help me in the comments down below. Okay. They have really short doors. You have to crouch to when you open. There's room in there. You can go in there. I mean, later on when we went to investigate, I think there was 3 or 4 of us in that space. It's like a storage nook. Is the only, way I can describe it. So as you walk up the stairs, the storage nook was right to the left. It was the only thing there. And there was only space there at the top of the stairs for that little storage nook. And then once you got up the stairs and turned to the right, his room was the first room that he shared with his girlfriend. And there was another room after that they didn't really use. It was used kind of just for storage. When we went, though, he said his girlfriend was in his room. So he said, I don't want to go in there right now. My girlfriend's in there. I just don't want to disturb her. I think she may still be sleeping, So we said, that's fine. So we just kind of stood at the top of the stairs talking. Now, he was directly across from his bedroom. Okay, he was standing facing away from his bedroom door, facing me and Sandra. Sandra was in between him and I. And I'm standing next to the nook, which is over here. And I'm pretty much facing the stairs. Okay, I'm right at the top. There's a railing there, He's kind of standing at the railing. And we're just talking, and I'm, we're asking what kind of, have you had any experiences up here? What's kind of going on? And I honestly don't remember what he said. And the reason is because, first of all, as we were standing there, I kept feeling like somebody was behind me, and it felt like they were about to shove me down the stairs. And I kept trying to, scoot a little closer to Sandra. I didn't want it to be obvious, though, okay? Trying to play it cool. It was such a horrible feeling. Literally any second, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to tumble down these stairs. Face forward. Here I go. And he's talking to us, and I'm looking at him as he's talking. And okay, I'm going to try to explain this the best way that I can, cuz it's kind of unexplainable. And it's not the first time, okay? It's not the first time this will happen. As he's talking and I'm looking at him, listening, taking notes, cuz I did take notes sometimes just so I wouldn't forget when I got back home. He's talking and I'm listening and looking, and the stare that this man was giving me was like he could see through to my soul. And the stare went on for minutes. And it wasn't just like, oh, this guy is weird and drunk and staring at me funny. Us ladies, a lot of us have experienced that before. This was different, okay? It literally felt like he could see right through my soul. And the seconds were ticking by as he was talking. And it was a literal moment of, I wish I could crawl under a rock or open up this little nook real quick and haul my ass in there and hide. Because the more seconds went by, the more it was like I started cringing, it's almost like I was shrinking because of the feelings that were associated with this stare. It was almost like he was it was almost like he was going into a trance, even though he was lucid and talking. And it finally got so uncomfortable that I kind of inconspicuously I kind of nudged Sandra with my elbow, because I had kept scooting a little bit closer to her. The only problem with scooting closer to her was she was closest to him. Okay. I was furthest from him, but I just kind of psh, Sandra. This is kind of like we need to get out of here. Let's get out of here. Because I had never been that uncomfortable in my life the way that I was in that moment. Okay. So Sandra got the hint. I cut him off. Okay, well, I appreciate the info. We've really got to go. We're kind of short on time today. We left. I held on to the railing for dear life all the way down the stairs. True story. We left. So we leave the house. As soon as we get in the car, Sandra looks at me and she said, "Oh my God, did you see how he looked? Did you see how he was looking at you?" And I'm like, yeah. So I told her everything that I just told you. So we leave and we go home. Now, when you're a paranormal investigator, one of the many things you do when you go home after investigation, even though this wasn't a technical investigation, you're going to listen to your audio recordings. Okay, you're going to see if you got any EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, for those that aren't familiar with the term. So, plug it in to the computer, and I got my headphones on, and I got one that day. I may have gotten two, but I got one that was really pretty clear. And the timing of when I got it is the craziest thing. Okay. Sandra got one also, because after the fact, we've gotten, hey, did you get anything? And, we would tell each other. So she got one. I can't remember what hers was. I think she may have even had a couple of them. I think she got one when we were in his mom's bedroom. I don't really remember what that was. Um, the one that I remember, the vivid one, came when we were up at the top of the stairs. When I felt like I was going to be pushed, when I felt like the man could see through my soul, it was during that time frame. Because you've got a digital recorder and there's time stamps, and you know the exact time of what time it was, when you captured that EVP. And the EVP that I captured that day was get out. 2 words, get out. It wasn't said nicely, going to tell you that. It was very ominous, get out. Okay, there was a growl with it, the whole thing. And I thought, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into? So I had such a bad feeling about this house and this, investigation. And I felt it was a little more than we were used to. Okay. We did a lot of investigations. Um, most of them weren't bad. They were just spirits wanting to communicate, wanting people to notice them. This one was different, and I needed some advice. Okay. So I ended up contacting John Zaffis. And for those of you who don't know who John Zaffis is, he is Ed and Lorraine Warren's nephew. Ed and Lorraine Warren from the movies that I'm sure many of you are aware of: Annabelle, The Conjuring, Amityville. Um, they paved the way for so many other investigators in the paranormal field, okay? Because they started a long time ago when it wasn't common, when it wasn't mainstream. Um, even now people think you're crazy for doing it, or having an interest in it. At that time period, when they started, it was much worse. So anyway, John Zaffis was Ed and Lorraine Warren's nephew. Still is. They both passed away, but John Zaffis is very much alive and well. And anybody in the paranormal field who's aware of John Zaffis, we all call him the Godfather of the paranormal. Very intelligent. He lives in New England. He has also inherited the interest or wanting to keep haunted objects like his aunt and uncle did. Okay. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the Warren Occult Museum. John Zaffis has one of his own. It's not public that I'm aware of yet. But he does have items just like they have. Okay. So he's had a paranormal group, for many, many years. He's done this for over 40 years at this point. I'm going to put his links also in the description box so you can check them out for yourself. He's a great guy. I had never talked to this man before ever. I followed him on Facebook, and I went to his website. He had his phone number on there, and I called him up one day. I said, hey, John, he answered. I said, you don't know me, but I've got this case. It's kind of, I'm a little unsure, I'm a little over my head here. He was so nice. So I said, could I get your opinion on what's going on with this? Because he, much like his uncle, Ed Warren, became a specialist in demonology, studying, the more negative aspects of the paranormal. So I said, what do you think? what do you think about this? I know you're not there, you haven't seen it, et cetera. But I told him, what the man told me, and I told him what Sandra and I experienced when we went to talk to him. And he said, sounds like there could be an infestation going on in that house. Now, infestation, it's not a possession. It's not at that point, but it's kind of like when you have a bug infestation. Things are happening. It's getting a little rocky. So he also informed me that when men are in the military, and it's no fault to them at all, when they do these tours, like he had been to Afghanistan, he had been to Iraq, not John Zaffis, but Sean. He said the negative energy when there's a war going on and people are being killed and hurt and everything that goes on. He said sometimes they can bring home attachments with them. Okay, negative attachments, demonic attachments, because that negative energy and those types of forces in the world are drawn to that negative energy. Okay, energy does not die; it goes out into the world, and it never dies. It stays there. It's perpetual. Okay. He said a lot of times they unknowingly bring home a negative attachment. Now, John Zaffis, just like his aunt and uncle, is Catholic. Okay. I was raised Catholic, but I wasn't a practicing Catholic. I'm more spiritual now. Um, but John Zaffis gave me some recommendations. He said, when you go back there to do the investigation, you should take holy water. And arm yourself well. Okay. So he told me different things that we could do. He's like, you can pray before you go in, all of these things. So I thanked John for his help, took down lots of notes during that phone call. And even though I had not been a practicing Catholic for quite a few years, I found myself going to the nearest Catholic church and taking a bottle with me and going and getting some holy water. You can walk right in and get it. It's free. Okay. I wasn't taking any chances because because I vividly remembered how I felt when I was up at the top of the stairs. So I also got some prayer cards. Okay. I got a St. Michael prayer card, St. Michael the Archangel, who is used to defend negative forces. We can talk more about that later. I won't get into it now. All of these things, I wanted to arm myself. And I also, so we did end up setting up a day for an investigation. I gave everybody the option to opt out. I said, you're not, I've never forced you to go anywhere. I'm not starting now, especially with this house. So anyhow, we get to the investigation. Now we've got, it's myself, it's Sandra's husband, Bill. He was our tech guy. He had video cameras and, we all had EMF readers. There's two other people besides them with us. And Sean was there the night that we went. His girlfriend was there, but she was very quiet and didn't really say much. She said hello, that was about it. And they stayed on the couch the entire time, downstairs in the living room while we were there. Just kind of weird to me. But anyhow, his mom was not there when we were there. So anyhow, as we're setting up, okay, we go in, we say hello, we're setting up, Bill's setting up his tripods for his cameras and the whole thing. I hear Bill calling me from the mom's bedroom. He's like, Psh, come here, Like, okay, what's going on? He said, look, and he's points to his shirt pocket. He had put an EMF reader in his pocket, and the needle was all the way up, off the chart. And he's like, I haven't even touched this. I stuck it in my pocket before we came in. I'm in here setting this tripod up for my camera, and this thing is off the charts. Okay. So you can get high EMF readings from lots of things. You can get them from nearby water sources, or, sometimes electrical interference, things from the basement. So he went down in the basement and he checked, we walked down there, we checked it out. We didn't see anything that would cause that EMF reader to spike that way. The needle went up and it stayed up. It never really went down. It just kind of, kept doing one of these, but it was always on the upper end. So we start the investigation. I went in the little nook upstairs with two of the other people, and Bill and Sandra went into Sean's bedroom, okay, because they were downstairs. Bill had set up his video camera in there as well, and they just kind of went in to sit down and do some EVP work, ask questions, whatever they were doing. As far as, their research. We went into the little nook. We were in there for a few minutes just I was doing some EVP work, that kind of thing. People were taking pictures. We come out of the little nook. I went downstairs for something, I don't remember what. A few minutes later, I see Sandra booking down the stairs. She wasn't running, because, that's number one rule while you're investigating. Don't run. Don't run out of a building. I'm going to tell you what, she was moving fast, okay? Comes down from upstairs, comes down the stairs, and right out the front door, and she was sobbing. And I thought, oh shit, what happened? She had never done this before, ever. Not once. Not even close. I walk up the stairs to go in there to see what was happening. Bill was still in there. I go to the doorway because she had opened the door when she flew out of there. And Bill's standing there, he's standing there, and I'm standing right at the doorway looking in, and I felt something behind me. Not directly behind me, but it was there. And then I see something out of my peripheral vision over here, and it's Sean. And he's standing. Now this time, he's the one standing like near the top of the stairs. I'm at this doorway looking in. And I look over, and when I see him out of the corner of my eye, I look over, and it's the same look I got when Sandra and I went to talk to him, times 1,000. And in that moment, I wanted to run. And because this time, the look on his face was much worse than it was the first time. And the only way to describe this look is this person was completely void of any kind of anything. It was so bizarre. And I instantly, I'm taken back right now. I'm feeling the feeling in the pit of my stomach. Recalling this. And this time, looking at him, and it wasn't for very long this time, let me tell you what. Because no, it was like there was something standing next to him or behind him. Like, it wasn't just him. There was a feeling of some kind of entity, negative spirit, whatever it was, standing next to him. And I turned back to face Bill again, who was in the bedroom. And I said, "Oh my God, Bill." And I'm trying to ask him what had happened with Sandra. And then I got sidetracked by Sean over here and whatever was there with Sean. I said, "Bill." And I'm trying to tell him without speaking because Sean is still standing over there. And Sean had not said a word. Just the stare. I said, "Bill, come here. Bill." Trying to be inconspicuous once again. And I step, Bill gets the idea, like, she wants me to look at something. And I back up a little from the door, from the doorway. Bill comes out and he like peeks his head around the corner. And when he did that, Sean snapped out of it. And then just quietly went back down the stairs. So I went, "Oh God," so then I'm telling Bill what had happened. And then finally I asked what happened with Sandra. And what happened was they were just sitting on the bed and they were just asking questions. They had their digital recorders. And she said she was overwhelmed by really negative emotion, like dread, like a feeling of dread. Pretty much what I was feeling when I was getting, this face from Sean and this feeling. It feels like dread. It's the only way to describe it. It's the only time I've ever felt that in my life. And never before then, never since. Not like that. It's unexplainable. Unless you've experienced it yourself, it's unexplainable. It doesn't even compare to the feeling of like driving down the road and, someone almost hits you or, oh my God, you get that rush of adrenaline. This is different. It's unexplainable. So we managed to pull ourselves together. We had a little, I told Sean downstairs, well, we're going to take a little break before we continue. So we did. We went outside. We got some air, we did go through the other areas. We went in the basement, through the kitchen and that, other areas. Now that night, we did get other EVPs that said, "Get out." There was one that we got pretty quickly as soon as we got there and went through the door. Something to the effect of, "You need to leave now." So the EVPs that we did get were always, telling us to mainly get out and to leave. We weren't very welcomed. So we went over all our evidence. I don't remember if we got anything on video or not, or camera. I don't think we really did. And I think that was one of the things that I found interesting. I'm like, here is this, these feelings I've gotten when I've been near this guy. Sandra's whole experience. I was kind of shocked we didn't really get anything on camera or video. And then I thought about it. And Bill and Sandra and I were talking about it one day, and I said, that's kind of strange. But then I said, then again, he was downstairs. Sean was downstairs in the living room pretty much the entire time we were investigating, with the exception of when he came upstairs, when I got that stare. that look um, when I went up to see what had happened with Sandra. And we kind of came to the conclusion that this thing, whatever this is, if this is an attachment, which we ended up, you know, concluding in our opinion that it was attached, something attached to him. Um, because I did ask him again, like, hey, I think, do you think maybe you could go to church or, because that was one of John Zaffis' recommendations. See if you can get him to go to church, or pray or any of those. And he just wanted no part of it. None. But I think what may have happened in this situation was it's almost like that negative entity, whatever it was, I still don't know. It's like it was so attached to him that we really only experienced the crazy things when he was in the room with us, with the exception of Bill and the EMF reader in the mom's bedroom. Okay. Her room, I think, had a lot of, as far as the crosses falling off the walls or the Bibles being thrown, that type of thing. Her room could, if there's a negative attachment in your house, it's going to go after the most religious. If you're a very Catholic religious person and the devil's trying to take you down or kind of get to you, they don't have to worry about somebody that's already kind of, forsaken God in a way. Okay. They're already on the devil's side. They need to go for this woman over here who her faith is strong, So I think that might explain, a lot of the activity that they said or that he said was going on in the mom's room. That was what he said. We never saw any of that while we were there. Okay. So anyhow, we did have to go back. Sandra and I we weren't too keen on it, but we always went back to share the evidence. We'd share the EVPs. This time his mom was there. We sat down at the table with them. We played the EVP recordings for them. We're always very honest in our opinions and what, showing them evidence. This is what we got. This is what we think could be going on. Because there are no absolutes when it comes to this. There's not. Okay. It's the paranormal. We told his mom that we thought Sean had something attached to him, that it could be possible that that's what was going on. She didn't really like that. She didn't like it at all. I mean, this is her son. I get it. I understand. I have a son. But we're always honest. I'm always honest. Okay. That was our opinion. They did ask us if we could kind of bless the house. And I said, well, we're not priests or pastors or anything. But they said, that's fine. Still, we would appreciate if we would just kind of do a blessing if you can. And I said, okay, as long as you join us. So what we did was we just we lit some candles. We all went through the house. We just said a little blessing and everybody kind of followed my lead on what I was saying. I just kind of, asked for negative spirits to leave the house and to leave the family alone and that type of thing. And that was that. I did hear from him not too long after that. He said things were better. I asked him if he was, going to church at all or anything, and he said no. And that was the end of it. So I don't really know what happened after that. I do know that was the worst feeling I've ever had doing a paranormal investigation. And the same might be true for Sandra. um, so as far as evidence goes, it wasn't a crazy. We didn't get crazy videos and all these things. And videos are hard anyway, and I think pictures are hard, especially nowadays. You can Photoshop things, and especially now there's AI. Oh my god. But that's why I always love doing EVP work, and it was always, it's always been kind of my specialty, the thing I wanted to learn the most about and use the most. Um, just for that reason. I don't know. I just, in my eyes, it's a little bit more credible, or, easier to believe when you're hearing it. Okay. So, anyhow, that wraps up paranormal case number 1, the case of the military veteran. If you guys have any questions, please leave a comment down below. I appreciate you all so much. Everybody who's subscribed so far, and this before I even put out my first video, you guys know who you are. I need to say a special thank you to my friend Daniel. Yes, I called you Daniel. I literally never call him that. This is probably the only time. Daniel, the Mad Dasher 420. He's here on YouTube. He has a channel. I'm going to link it down below. I want to thank you so much. Tears. For your support. He's given me a lot of help. Look at me. Ooh, okay. All that stuff from that case got me in my feels, okay? It's got me in my emotions. But anyway, MD, thank you so much for all of your help, all of your support. With starting this channel. I appreciate you. I love you. Thanks so much. I am going to link his info down below. Check him out. You'll love him. So that wraps it up for the first episode at Lisa's Haunted Cottage. Thanks so much for sticking with me, guys. I'm going to be going over lots of different topics, from hauntings, ghost stories, real paranormal investigations, popular movies and the real stories behind them, the real information, the real deal. Aliens, UFOs, all those things as time goes on and these videos evolve. So thank you so much for joining in at Lisa's Haunted Cottage. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you the next time.